Securing Your Financial Future with the Wright Law Alliance. Hello, I'm Stuart, your co-host for the podcast, Securing Your Financial Future with the Wright Law Alliance. For those of you new to the podcast, I'd like to introduce you to Angelyn Wright, the owner.
Hi, Stuart. It's good to be here with you today.
It's good to have you. So we're going to continue our series of short podcasts for you guys dealing with financial hardships during COVID-19. Our goal for these podcasts are to provide information that can help you during these unprecedented times. I'm going to ask a series of questions focused on scenarios people may be dealing with concerning foreclosure and how to navigate them. If you guys listening have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If I'm behind on my mortgage, Angelyn, should I be concerned?
Stuart, whenever you're behind on a mortgage, that is a good time to be concerned. But we don't want people to let that concern paralyze them. We want them to let that concern prompt them to action. So yes, be concerned, but don't let it get to the point of paralysis.
Should you contact your mortgage lender before defaulting on your loan?
That's a really good question, and I think you should. If you see that you won't be able to make the payments, you see that default coming, it's a good idea to contact your mortgage company, let them know your circumstances. They may have some options for you. Some mortgage companies will tell you there's nothing we can do until you actually default, but I would call before the default, because then they'll have a record that you were proactive and you reached out to them even before they knew there was a problem.
That makes sense. Can loan modification save you from foreclosure?
Very often it can. A loan modification, just to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about, is where you work with your mortgage company and they change the terms of your mortgage loan, and it'll usually result in your payments may be lower, or if you have defaulted and you have some back payments you owe, they may put that on the back end of your loan so you don't pay it until the end. They may reduce your interest rate. So there are a lot of different kinds of loan modifications. But one of the key things about loan modification is it does involve you continuing to make mortgage payments. So if you still have an income or a source of money to make those payments, loan modification could be really helpful. Sometimes people have lost their income and they don't have a way to make those payments. So loan modification would be a very limited help if you're not able to make any payment.
So would you say generally it buys you some time?
It could buy you some time to make other plans, to make decisions, to try to increase your income. So loan modification may buy you some time, but often to get the modification, you have to be able to show what your current income is. The mortgage company would want you to be able to show them that you will be able to make the payments. So let's say, for example, someone lost their job and they were looking for a loan modification. The lender, the mortgage company, might not be willing to give the modification if they don't have any income and they can't show that they already have a job.
Oh, okay. Should you use leasebacks and straw buyers to stop foreclosure?
You know, that's a really good question, and it's a question that lots of people have different opinions about. Leaseback and straw buyers usually involves transferring title to your house. So you would no longer own the house. Someone would pay you to take the house and they take it as is. So just transferring the title to the house doesn't usually stop a foreclosure by itself, because the mortgage company came before that new buyer. So they could foreclose even though there's a new person shown as owning the house. Usually what that straw buyer would do, or that leaseback person would do, is then maybe file a bankruptcy or work with the mortgage company to stop the foreclosure. But just doing the straw buyer or just having the leaseback doesn't necessarily by itself stop the foreclosure.
Should you deal with foreclosure right away?
The answer to that is definitely yes. As soon as you get the notice of foreclosure, or maybe even before you get that written notice in the mail, you will often, if you're in touch with your lender, they will often tell you, we're sending this to our foreclosure department. So you may actually know before you get the notice in the mail that the lender plans to foreclose. And at that point, you want to look at what your options are. You may have been denied a modification. You may or may not have an income. So you want to look at your options. If you're trying to stay in the house, potentially bankruptcy could be an option. But sometimes people don't want to stay in the house. Sometimes they just want to buy themselves enough time to make other arrangements and to move out of the property. But when you know the foreclosure is coming, you have to look at taking action right away, or at least setting up that plan right away, because the last minute things tend not to go so well. So you want to give yourself as much time to deal with that foreclosure as you can.
Okay. So if you do file for foreclosure, is there a certain amount of time that buys you? You know, because I recall you said you can filing for a foreclosure allows you to stay in the house. Is it for a certain length of time, or how does that work?
Well, it depends on what actions you choose to take. So if you're in the position of having a foreclosure that's imminent, that's going to happen, then you're already behind on the payments. So for example, if you're able to and you were to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, that might buy you anywhere from 45 to 60 days, or maybe even more. That is to plan to leave the house, to vacate the premises. If you decide you want to try to keep the house and you were to look at filing maybe a Chapter 13 case, then you would have 3 to 5 years to catch up on the payments on the house. So how much time you can stay in the house depends on what is your ultimate goal. Are you trying to ultimately keep the house, or are you ultimately planning to leave? And what actions are you taking to achieve that goal? Are you going to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Are you going to work with the lender to see if they'll give you extra time? So how much time you have can really be dependent on the course of action you choose to take.
Okay, so if I didn't file for a bankruptcy and I just walked away from the house, how would that affect me? I mean, could they still come after me for the mortgage payments, or what does that look like?
Well, first of all, if you decided to just walk away from the house, if you were out before the foreclosure happened, that's fine. But you certainly want to look at maybe leaving the house within about 2 to 3 weeks after the foreclosure. As far as the debt is concerned and how that would affect you, it depends a lot on where you live, what state you live in. Here in Georgia, the lender would have to use another legal process called a confirmation sale if they wanted to come after you for what you still owed on the mortgage. That doesn't happen very often. It can happen, but it doesn't happen very often. Usually the lender will just write off what you owed. They may send you a 1099 indicating that they canceled your debt. And you would want to talk to a tax professional about, does that 1099 for debt cancellation of the mortgage, does that have any tax consequences for you?
How long do you have to vacate after foreclosure?
It really can depend on where you live. Here in Georgia, if the new owner files an eviction lawsuit against you, that's a very fast moving lawsuit. You only get 7 days to respond, and you could be evicted from the premises after about 2 or 3 weeks. So we tend to tell people, while you may have longer, it's best if you can vacate the premises, have all your stuff out, and be moved out within about 2 to 3 weeks after the foreclosure happens.
Are there any tax consequences to a foreclosure?
There can be, and that's one of the reasons why, if a foreclosure happens and you will get this form 1099 from the lender, that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important to talk to your tax person to see if there are going to be tax implications for you. So for some people there may be, for many people there won't be, but you want to make sure you don't want to allow what was a debt problem that you can deal with to turn into a tax problem that becomes so much more complicated.
That makes sense. Is bankruptcy discharge taxable?
Bankruptcy discharge is actually not taxable. So, for example, I want to just set up an example so you can see the difference. Let's say outside of the mortgage arena, you had a credit card and you decided you didn't want to pay the full amount, and you made a deal with a credit card company, and you owed them $200, but you made a great deal, and they agreed to accept $50 to pay off this credit card. Well, then they will send you a 1099 for the $150 you didn't pay them, and the IRS will treat that as income. So you didn't actually get the $150, but the IRS will treat that as income because you got that 1099 for the canceled debt. So if you get rid of debt outside of bankruptcy, very often it can have tax consequences because your income could go up, which could drive your taxes up. But when you get rid of income through a bankruptcy, the law says that way of getting rid of debt does not increase your income, and it does not cause taxes. So a bankruptcy discharge is not a taxable thing.
If I'm facing a financial hardship, what should I do?
I'm a big proponent and advocate of, as soon as you know that there's a problem, get in touch with people who can help you with that. So if you know you're facing a financial hardship, you could reach out and speak with people who can help you kind of look at your issues and come up with some different options for how you can handle it. We do that with people all the time at the Wright Law Alliance. So if you're facing a financial hardship, you could call us at 404-373-9933, or you could go to our website, which is Wright, WRIGHT, bklaw.com. Send us a message or a question through the website, and we'll be happy to help you.
That's really helpful info, Angeline. So thank you guys for joining us for the podcast, Securing Your Financial Future with the Wright Law Alliance. Look out for our next episode. Take care and stay safe.